Good morning, children. Okay, so after a weekend, excited again? What do we do today? Today I have brought you a new chapter in your MCB Reader book. Okay, in your MCB Reader, there's a new chapter and it's a very sweet one, very nice chapter. You'll enjoy it a lot. So it's lesson number 9. Children, we have left lessons 7 and 8. If time allows, we'll do it. Otherwise, lesson number 9 is better than 7 and 8, so I'm doing it earlier, before others. A dog from nowhere. From nowhere means you don't realize from where the things or the person has come, and we can say from nowhere. So there comes a dog from nowhere. This person did not even realize from where the dog had come. So he says a dog from nowhere. There is one old uncle, let's call him Uncle, Mr. Jones. He lived in a city. Any city? He lived in any city and he had worked in an office. He used to work in an office and he had worked for 35 long years. 35 years. Can you imagine a period of 35 years? Oh my God. And he worked in the office. In the same office, used to go in the morning, come back in the evening, used to sit at the same desk, morning man, get up in the evening, and he used to do the same job, like same work. Whatever his job was, he used to do the same work day after day after day after day. So it was very monotonous for him, very boring for him. He wanted to do something new. And when he retired at the age of 35, what he did, he thought, I must do something new. Whatever he wanted, it was his time to understand, to realize, to do what he wanted. This is what we say, realizing his dream. Let's read this story. After living in the city for 35 years, Mr. Jones settles down in the countryside. Countryside, away from the city. He loves life there. Like even I love life away from the city. Away from the city is hustle bustle. I don't like here. The only thing he craves for is a dog. There was only one thing that he did not have, and that was a dog. He wanted to own a pet dog. One day, a handsome fox terrier comes to his farm. Fox terrier is a breed of dogs. Will the owner of the dog come and claim him? No, it was not Mr. It was not Mr. Jones' dog, but it came from somewhere. And now do you think the owner will come and take the dog away from him? Let's read this. Goldie was a honey-colored fox terrier with a bushy tail. Bushy tail, Bushy. Tails that foxes have or squirrels have. Bottle brush ke jaisa thick sa hota hai. Okay, so he also had a bushy tail. He was intelligent, curious, and bubbling over with energy. Now, this dog was intelligent, curious, and very cheerful. Bubbling means cheerful. He came from nowhere. As I told you, Mr. Jones did not even realize from where it had come and attached himself to Mr. Jones and started living. Attached himself means started living with Mr. Jones. For 35 years, as I told you, this paragraph is only this. For 35 years, Mr. Jones had worked in a city office as a clerk. For 35 years, he had worked in the same office, sat at the same one desk, done the same thing day in and day out. When he was 65, he retired and set about realizing his dream. I told you, realizing his dream. Like whatever he wanted to do, it was his time to do that now. After that boring job for 35 years, he moved from the city and bought a farm in the countryside. There he and his wife grew vegetables and looked after their fruit trees and their garden. Now that was his time when he could do whatever he wanted to. Otherwise, the morning may get up, get ready, go to office, come back, get tired, eat and sleep hota tha. Now he thought, now when they bought a farm, a simple plot they bought and they grew some plants, trees there, fruit trees, vegetables, plants and all that. And they used to look after it. The sight of a squirrel cracking a nut or the sound of a flock of birds taking off gave him intense joy. And what do you get when you have a lot of trees and plants around? What do you get? You can have squirrels there And have you ever noticed how a squirrel cracks a nut with its front paws? Chick, chick, chick. And when the birds fly, frrrr sound. So he used to love those sounds and used to love watching squirrels cracking a nut or the flock of birds taking off gave him intense. Intense means too much. He had everything he wanted but a dog. He had everything that he wanted in his life, but now he just wanted one dog more. He craved for a fox terrier, but he couldn't afford to buy one, and he loved that breed of dogs, fox terrier ko, but it used to be very expensive, so he didn't have money to buy one. And then one fine day, then what happened? Goldie came from nowhere and became his best friend. Why Goldie name? Honey colored hai na? Like honey, color of a honey. So its name was, like, he started calling him Goldie. Goldie belonged to someone else. Now it was not his dog. Mr. Jones knew he should advertise but kept putting it off. Like when you want to tell something to a lot of people at the same time, what do? You put it in the newspaper. Usko advertisement कहते हैं ना? So he wanted to give an advertisement in the newspaper that there some dog had come to his house and whosoever it is, please take it back. But he kept delaying it. Putting it off means delaying. And these were meanings that though I'm telling you, but you're going to find it out again on your own. Putting it off, kept delaying. It's been 3 weeks since Goldie came to us, Mrs. Jones said to her husband. One day his wife said, Mr. Jones, what is this? This dog came to us 3 weeks back and you have not given an advertisement in the newspaper. Have you made an effort to find the owner? Are you doing anything? Making an effort to find the owner? Mr. Jones felt a little guilty and ashamed. Mr. Jones felt bad. He said, no, I'm not doing anything about it. Anyway, because he loved the dog, no, he wanted to play and keep the dog with him. So he was not giving the advertisement in the newspaper. Smart, hai na? Such a nice man. Next day, an ad appeared in the lost and found column of the local newspaper. Lost and found columns hote hain, where you can tell something lost, something found. Every local newspaper carries. Aapka Dainik Bhaskar and Rajasthan Patrika also has this column. A week passed and nobody came to claim the dog. Now what happened? The best part was nobody was coming to say that this dog is mine, that I have lost my dog. And Mr. Jones was enjoying living with the dog. So he was very happy that nobody was coming. Then a car bearing an out-of-state license stopped in front of the farmhouse. Then after a week, suddenly what happened one day? How sad. One car came and stopped in front of the farmhouse. And children, do you know one thing? That seeing the number plate, you can understand that the car belongs to which state. Anyway, so the number plate told him that the car was not of his state, it was some other state it had come from. Mr. Jones was making apple juice and his wife was returning from the orchard with a basket of purple plums. That time what happened when the car came and stopped in front of his house? He was making apple juice because he used to grow fresh apples in his farm, and his wife, she had plucked some purple plums from her orchard and she was bringing them in the basket. The stranger strode towards them. The stranger walked towards them. They noticed that he was a boyish grin lit up his features, and that one coat sleeve hung limp by his side. Can you see, children? Like this man had come to Mr. Jones. He is tall, boyish features means he is looking like a boy. He is not an old man. And one coat sleeve, can you see this? One coat sleeve hanging loose. That means he did not have one hand. Okay? Limp means hanging without the hand in it by his side. I hope you will forgive my coming unannounced, he said. I have come to you about... And he stopped and whistled. Oh, that's fresh apple juice. It smells delicious. He said, "Sorry, Mr. Jones, I did not announce about my coming, and I hope you will forget me or forgive me for it. I have come without any prior information." And but just then he said, "Ah, you're making apple juice. It smells so nice." Mr. Jones offered him a glass. He said, "Okay, come and sit." Obviously, normal etiquette, if somebody comes and we are eating something, we must offer that person also. Mr. Jones offered him a glass. He liked it so much that he had 3 more glasses of the juice. Oh my god! Altogether, he had 4 glasses. First of Mr. Jones gave him, then he had 3 more. As it was afternoon, Mrs. Jones brought homemade food for all of them. Now, Mrs. Jones, she used to grow her own vegetables. She brought homemade food for all of them. Afternoon time, they understood that this man must be hungry, even must not have had his lunch. The stranger ate it with great relish, and the stranger loved that food because homemade and homegrown vegetables. So they were smelling also nice. They had lovely taste. After having lunch, he stood up and patted his stomach. Can you see? He's patting his stomach. Can you see, children? Patting. He's patting his stomach. Okay. "If I stayed with you long, I would have a big tummy," he said. He said, "Mr. Jones, you are feeding me such nice, lovely things that if I stay for long here, I will have a big tummy. I'll be eating and eating and eating here, only eating and eating. So I'll have a big tummy." So anyway, he said. Mr. Jones looked up at him and asked, "What's your height?" Mr. Jones said, "Hey, you look very tall. What's your height?" 6'2". "I'm an infantryman." 6'2" means he was 6 feet and 2 inches tall. And I am an infantryman. Infantry means he worked in defense service. He was a soldier. "Oh, our son was 6. He was on the ship that sank." Mr. Jones says how sad it was for them, no? He said they had a son. Earlier they had a son, but he had died. So he said our son was 6. Their son was 6 years old when he died. The ship that he was traveling on had sunk in the ocean. "I'm sure he left you proud memories," the stranger said softly. The stranger felt bad for Mr. Jones. He said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sure the son left proud memories." Proud means what you can think about nicely, fond memories. "Now I will explain why I have come. It's about the dog you advertised." Now the stranger told them he had 4 glasses of juice, and he had the lunch also, then they talked even. He said, "Now let me tell you why I have come here." He was a stranger. He was not known to Mr. Jones earlier. He said, "It's about the dog. The dog that you had advertised." "Oh," said Mr. Jones, "the dog." Mr. Jones became sad. He understood that the man had come to take the dog, and he did not want to give away the dog. He had started loving him so much, and because he always wanted to have a dog, the dog came on its own, and it had been living with them for 3 weeks, and he became sad. "About 4 weeks ago," resumed the man, or 1 week ho gaya tha after giving the advertisement. So it had been 4 weeks since they were living together, the dog and Mr. Jones. Resumed the man means the man started again telling, "I had a flat tire driving through this part of the countryside." He said, "Once, just about 4 weeks back, what had happened with me? I was traveling through this road. I was traveling through this road. Suddenly, I had a flat tire. Flat tire means tire puncture. And then I went to call a mechanic. I had to go and call a mechanic to put my tire back, leaving my dog behind in the car. And I had left my dog in the car. When I got back, the dog was missing. I looked for him, but," he said, "and when I came back, the dog wasn't there. I went to look for it. I tried to find it, but I could not find my dog." And he left the sentence half. Do you see? He's leaving the sentence half here. He did not finish. "Okay," Mr. Jones said. What breed was your dog? Asked Mr. Jones in a laden voice. Laden means sad, oh God, dull and heavy. Now because he's realizing, he's understanding. A big honey-colored fox terrier. I would know him instantly and so would he. The young man said, my dog was a honey-colored fox terrier breed. And the color is honey-colored. And Goldie also had come from nowhere. Now do you understand? It had come from that man to Mr. Jones' house. And he says, as soon as I see my dog, I'll recognize him, and even the dog would recognize me. ऐसा ही होता है ना, like if you have had some pet, especially the dogs, they never forget their owners. And the owners also, like when you stay together, when they have been living together, they must have grown fond of each other. So he said, I'll just recognize my dog very quickly. It was then that hope died in Mr. Jones' heart. And now Mr. Jones became sad suddenly. He is your dog, I'm sure. He said, Acha, it's your dog. I'm sure the one that I have is yours. I'm very curious to know his name. He said, Goldie, so I just kept his name Goldie, but I'm very eager to know his name. It's bad luck to change a dog's name because I call him Goldie, but I did not know his actual name, and it's not good to change anybody's name because name is one's identity. So he said it's not good to change anybody's name. So just tell me his real name also. Please call him by his name and let him recognize you. Now Mr. Jones knew that Goldie was not his dog. The man had come to take that dog, but he was not ready to give that dog back to the man. So he said, just call him by his real name and let me see that if he recognizes you or not. He went with the neighbor's boy, and any minute now he'll be coming back. So he said, Goldie has gone for a walk. Neighborhood mein there was a young boy living, small boy. He had taken Goldie for a walk because everybody loved that dog. Very good looking it was, very sweet. So he said that my neighbor boy has taken him for a walk, and they must be just coming back. Here he comes, said Mr. Jones. And just then the boy came back with the dog. I bet he'll be glad to see you, he said. Oh, your dog is back. He must be happy to see you here. The dog started quickly towards the tall man, then stopped and looked at Mr. Jones. Now do you realize, children, what happened? The dog started moving towards the young man fast. But then it stopped halfway. He looked at the man. He looked at Mr. Jones. Why? It was so confusing for him. It was so difficult for him to decide where to go. The man had looked after him in the past, had loved him in the past, but Mr. Jones had looked after him, has been loving him for last 4 weeks. Present, uske present mein Mr. Jones hai. The man was in the past. So the dog did not know where to go. Standing between the two, he looked from one to the other, a baffled expression on his face. Baffled means confused, totally confused. He did not know what to do, whether to go with the old one or to stay on with the new master. Then he strode towards Mr. Jones and licked his hand. Then he finally went to Mr. Jones and licked his hand with its tongue. After an awkward silence, the stranger said, now the stranger is realizing that it was his dog. He understood that it's his dog, but then he just realized that the dog loved Mr. Jones a lot, and Mr. Jones also loved the dog a lot. So he did not want to. And then he realized that old man had lost his son when he was only 6 years. So he wanted to make this old couple happy. So he said, there is a resemblance, a remarkable resemblance, but dogs often look alike. The name will tell. Here, Chief, he called softly. Now the man did not want to make Mr. Jones sad, so he didn't want to take the dog back with him. He said, okay, मेरा dog भी ऐसा ही था. There is a lot of resemblance between this dog and my dog. बट ऐसा ही होता है, ऑल द डॉग्स लुक अलाइक, सेम ब्रीड है, सेम कलर है, तो दे विल लुक अलाइक. तो ऐसा करते हैं कि लेट्स ट्राई कॉलिंग हिम by his name and let's see whether he recognizes me or not. And he said, Chief. The dog, he called him by the name Chief. The dog's only response was to whimper and press his face against Mr. June's outstretched hand. Mr. Jones had taken out his hand to the dog, and the dog was licking his hand, holding his hand, and whimpering, It was not ready to leave Mr. Jones because he had understood that Mr. Jones would love him a lot. Not my dog, said the tall man. The tall man said, no, it's not my dog. He thanked Mr. and Mrs. Jones for their hospitality and left in a hurry. Hospitality means the way you look after your guests. That's called hospitality, nicely or badly. So he told Mr. Jones and Mrs. Jones, hey, you were very nice people. You people were very nice to me, and I'm so grateful that you gave me nice fresh apple juice and fresh homemade food. But this dog is not mine. Purposely he left the dog with Mr. Jones because he did not want to make him sad, and he realized that even the dog loved Mr. Jones a lot. Fine young fellow, said, and then he left in a hurry, and he quickly left that place and went to, he started moving back. Fine young fellow, said Mr. Jones, wondered why he was in such a hurry. Mr. Jones saying, when he left, Mr. Jones said, पता नहीं इतना जल्दी जल्दी क्यों चला गया? He was such a nice young man. Do you know, children, why so hurriedly he left? He must be trying to hide his tears. It was his dog actually. He had come to take the dog, but the dog was not ready to go with him. And Mr. Jones also did not want to give away the dog. And the man understood the love, the bonding between the two, and he purposely left his dog with him. So he must not be very happy doing it. So he left quickly. A week passed by and no claimants appeared. Then another week passed by. Nobody came to claim the dog. Claimant means one who can claim. So nobody was coming to say that this was our dog. Because actually jiska tha wo to had gone back. The problem now is to find his real name. Mr. Jones told his wife. Now Mr. Jones telling his wife one day कि हमने तो गोल्डी रख दिया name. But actually what is the real name of the dog? We must find out. The same day a telegram appeared. Telegram होता है छोटा सा message होता है. It comes very quickly. It doesn't take as long as a letter takes. एक telegram आया उनके पास. And what was written on the telegram? Nobody had written the name, who had sent the telegram, from where it had come. There was nothing about it. Only thing written was, try happy. Means, the man had called the dog Chief. Mr. Jones was calling the dog Goldie. But actual owner तो वो man ही था ना. That young man was the actual. He knew the dog's real name. And he said, try calling him by the name Happy. And that is capitals में given it was written on the telegram. So what do we see here? The love, the bonding between Mr. Jones and the dog. They both understood each other's feelings. It's very difficult to find, but it was there. The young man's sacrifice. It was young man's dog. But seeing Mr. Jones, that Mr. Jones was a nice man, he had looked after him nicely, he had lost his son long back, and he was loving the dog, and he loved the dog so much that the young man did not say that it was his dog. He left his dog with him, and later on sends a telegram telling him the real name of the dog. He said, try calling him by the name Happy, it will respond. So this was the story, children. That's all for this day. I've sent you in the worksheet. I've sent you the words. Do the spellings. Few meanings are there because there are hardly any difficult words here. So few meanings I have sent. Do the spellings and words nicely. Next class we will do the question answers. Okay. Bye bye.